What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're reacting in a way to the Final Fantasy VII new trailer that just dropped last week from State of Play at in the Sony State of Play event. And as obviously fans of Final Fantasy, shocker, we wanted to kind of give our impressions. We've watched the trailer several times, and we wanted to think about it over the weekend because there's a lot here. I don't want to be a downer, and so I'm going to start positive. I'm going to express some concerns, but we're going to overall talk about the remake of Final Fantasy VII, a very hotly anticipated thing as well, and just this trailer leading into E3. Chris, what's your takeaway? Like, you sent it to me. You're like, dude, you got to look at this, and I was like, okay, what just
I
happened?
saw it within the first 2,000 views on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, I saw it immediately. I was like, oh, yes. And I clicked on it. Initially blown away by the visuals. Like, just blown away. So excited.
The audio too. I'm going to jump in on your visual.
Oh, as trailers go, I'm hoping that gameplay looks somewhat like that.
Well, they teased a little bit of it, and that's where I get concerned, but go ahead.
But like, you don't know, like with Final Fantasy single player games, there's no saying that you're not like going into combat that looks like that and then panning out of combat. Like, I don't know how they're going to pace this game.
Yeah.
Because they've obviously totally remade it. This was made in 97 the first time around. So like, I didn't beat it, not because I didn't like it. I didn't beat it because in 1997, I still had bedtimes and I had to share the console with my brothers. So I didn't beat most games because I had limited access to video games.
So it's over 20 years. So they're remaking this game.
It's been a while.
So for me, for those that don't know, I actually owned Final Fantasy VII before I owned a PlayStation, before I had a system to play it on. I got a memory card, the game. My friend had a PlayStation, and I read through the booklet, because like y'all remember the things. I read through that booklet cover to cover. I was really excited to play this game. Saved up, got a PlayStation, and just dove into it. I think the experience was so interesting, and so because for me, Final Fantasy VII was a game where it was cool to like Final Fantasy and RPGs, because for the longest time, I loved Final Fantasy, and everybody was like, oh, I like Madden, or I like this. But then all of a sudden, everybody at school was like, are you playing Final Fantasy VII? Like, where did this game come from? Oh my God, the visuals, the bike scene, like there was these moments, and it was, for me, the surreal experience as we took it into it. And so it's been over 20 years. So I rated, in our tier list, Final Fantasy VII as A rank. I didn't rank it S. I think 6 by far, I think in my opinion, was always a better game. But that is no way diminishing the impact that 7 had. It really brought Final Fantasy into the cultural forefront and represented what RPGs are. And so it has this great nostalgia. And that's where, for me, my first bit of concern is that when I look at the trailer and how amazing it looks, when we talk about what we don't know and what we've rumored, like the concept of it's going to be episodic and it's going to, it's like, I don't know what, there's so much we don't know. My concern is that it is so beloved that unless they just deliver, like unless they come all guns blazing with the highest level of production, the highest level of love and care for it, they only stand a chance of pissing everybody off to where everybody's like, no, curse you, Square. Like they announced it like it's over 20 years old. Like they announced it like what, 4 years ago, the remake, and now it's like it's been a long time.
2015, and then they kept teasing things, and then like 2000, I think like 17 was the last time we heard anything, and then it just stopped for like 2 years now. It's like Final Fantasy what?
Yeah. It changed developers and what came back in house. Like it's all the like a longer game development. I think time and time again doesn't necessarily prove a better game, and that's where like I do not want to be a downer on it because this has me excited for Square-Enix and E3 this year. I just want them to just I want them to knock it out of the park. I want that people to play this game and be like, it's better than the original on so many levels, and it takes advantage of so much of the technology because nostalgia is going to be the thing they have to beat. You have to make it so that you beat out nostalgia. I should be wanting to play this game with my kids and not...
I'll be frustrated if it's exclusive.
Well, right now it looks like it. Right now it looks like it's PlayStation. I was like bring it to Stadia, bring it to like whatever, like bring it out. Like it should now, and I'm fine if it's timed exclusive. If it's timed exclusive to Sony for a year, fine, not a big deal, not a problem. Like that's on That's on you, Google. That's on you, Microsoft. That's on you, Nintendo, or whatever. Like, for not like making whatever showing up to the forefront. Or maybe Sony was the driver of this. Maybe Sony was like, "Hey, Square, we want to do this, and we're going to push this forward." So, like, honestly, that's all business stuff. But yeah, whew.
So my wife's, it just reminds me a lot of, so my wife's boss, when my wife was moving up through her firm, she would occasionally get put in charge of things where there were people who were ranked higher than her, had more years of experience, but in this one task, they answered to her because she was in charge of that task. And sometimes she would want to go against the grain, against the standard of things they did because it best performed that task. And this VP said, I will back you. I will back you if you were telling other VPs what to do. I will back you if you were telling other associate VPs what to do. I will back you in this bold move. And that's what it sounds like they're doing in Final Fantasy VII. But there's a second half to what he would always say. He goes, but you better be right. and that's how I feel about this. Like, you want to remake 7, bold move. It's an iconic game. I'd have to go back and look at the dates, but I think it might be the first Final Fantasy game I ever played. I know 10 wasn't, even though 10 was my favorite. So I know something primed me to the series. Looking at the dates, it probably was 7. If you're going to go back and redo that, that's fine. And it can be incredible. And it might be the best thing for the franchise. But you better be right. Like, it better be good. So if it ends up being modular, if it ends up being something, we saw Final Fantasy 15 kind of struggle with the definition of what DLC is, what that delivery package is, and what the engagement of that is. I've seen people saying about Final Fantasy 14 that it should just move to being a single player game. Like, there's people who don't like the multiplayer aspect, and it never that because it's still an MMO. So multiplayer is like in the genre. But as we talk about things like the trust system and all that, I would love to see Final Fantasy VII be one step closer to a service model single player game, because I'm ready to pay $15 a month to be a Square-Enix subscriber. I don't know.
I'm with you. It's that obviously the service model, for as much as people hate it, it's this weird thing. It's kind of like this drug addiction concept, and I know that's just fueling the idea of why we should resist it. But the first hit being free, it's like you get on the train and then it's very difficult to get off. And overall, your experience can be generally positive. There are definitely some bumps and some things that need to be worked out. That's where it comes down to the episodic. Like, does episodic mean that we get to play in the world of Final Fantasy VII through these different stories and characters and have a more in-depth experience than we've had before? Then that sounds like a really good trade-off. That sounds like something interesting that I could be a part of. I like the movie. I like it when we can go back to these worlds. I like what they've done with Ivalice and how we visit that world across multiple games. Tactics, 12, Vagrant Story. I can't even say the word. And so I enjoy that. Now with 7, imagine if this episodic kind of concept brings that you have the full game of 7. You have that kind of story and whatever they do. That's episode 1. Now, like another episode, turns out they're going to add in some kind of multiplayer component that is additive to the story, and it plays beautifully. Great, sign me up. If it is enhancing the overall product, fantastic. If it's only serving as a gut punch of, well, you have Midgar, that's episode 1. Then you have this zone, that's episode 2. And then you got to wait long periods of time between them, and then you got to, all this content is missing between them, and then they're going to piecemeal sell it to you overall. Like, okay, wait a minute, let's have a sit down conversation. It's obviously experimental. Maybe that's where it all makes sense, but then I would say that's where having it just locked on PlayStation 4 also doesn't make sense, because having that kind of episodic concept, meaning when we've seen it in the past, it can transcend generations. What's happening in 2020? New console generations. If 7 comes out this year on PS4, and then next year you got to start it all over, nothing carries forward, and episode 4 is now on the next generation, well, I guess you're gonna have to go pick up 1, 2, that's where, who knows, there's a bigger question here, and I think maybe we'll do it as a special topic in and of itself, because I want us to think about it. But is Square Enix on the verge of having the best E3 that they've had? Last year, it was awful. It ended up concluding in Kingdom Hearts 3, and I think we looked at ourselves and said, "Is that it? Are they done?" And then, it's like it was focusing on a lot of Kingdom Hearts 3, which wasn't necessarily a bad choice, but the Quiet Man, like what was there, like they and now this year they're blocking a whole, like they're taking over, like I think Sony's spot, like where Sony used to be, or some part where I'm hoping they can really show up and deliver. We're talking 14, we're talking who knows what else. 15 is officially done at this point. Kingdom Hearts is done. 7 Remake is not a big enough game, I think, to carry an entire show. So we know they've been working on Avengers. We know that they've had some kind of things for a long time. So I don't know if this is the year where they're going to sit down and say, welcome, we've got so much to talk about, and a lot of it's going to be interesting. Or, is it going to be a year in which that it's like, okay, well, you got to keep waiting and wondering and hoping. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm excited. I wonder how true to form, like, it's such a big remaster of the graphics that like, are they also going to change the way the battle system works? Are they going to make drastic changes? Like,
everything they've shown, it looks like the battle system is action oriented, which doesn't necessarily bother me. But your point on transition, like if I go into a random fight and now I'm doing action, does that feel good, or is it where like the game is seamless and all of a sudden I'm just going right into action combat, which could be fun in and of itself because it is different enough that it doesn't feel like I'm just playing a visually enhanced version of this.
Right.
I go back and forth. Like, are you wanting an action game? Because I liked 15's combat, but I felt like it needed work.
I mean, first and foremost, I want it to go to some form of mobile platform. So, like, I want it to be Vita supported, which seems unlikely. I mean, why would somebody create Vita support these days? And because the Vita's been kind of retired. Or I want Switch supported. So, like, first and foremost, my concern with this is where can I play it? Because I mean, as of the trailer, it is a PlayStation 4 exclusive. Like, that's the only logo at the end there, because that's where I play things now. But I mean, looking back at like where did the remake, where has it been released as of now? So like, it looks like the international version was released on PS1 Classic in 2009, and then it was compatible with the PS3.
PS4, Xbox, it's on Switch, so it's like all the original 7 is everywhere you can pretty much play video games that you want.
So if we're getting a remake,
unless you have a phone,
all the same places. Well, I hear people have phones.
I would say for the remake, like, we don't know. I think that if it was this Sony who originated, is this a deal? A timed exclusive, no issue. But if it's just going to be locked down to just PlayStation forever, which I would say probably not, because we've already seen 7 and we've already seen that these things are changing hands, and ultimately it makes sense that Microsoft, Nintendo, if it's even capable of running on the Switch. But then we talk about cloud gaming, Stadia, xCloud, PlayStation Now, like all of the cloud gaming can make any of this possible as the internet speeds improve, as that situation improves across the country, so I don't think exclusivity is going to be a kind of a major concern in the long run. I think it's definitely a good thing that it comes to PlayStation first, because it is such an iconic PlayStation franchise that it only I think it would be a disservice to the fans of 7, of PlayStation, for them to not have at least a first crack at it, right? It would be like if all of a sudden, hey, Halo 6 is dropping on PlayStation first. Like, what? Like, wait a minute. That's a Microsoft thing. It's like, well, Microsoft's going multi-platform, so it's like whatever.
It was a very, I remember it being beautiful for its time, but like, obviously I haven't gone back and looked at what those graphics look like this much later.
This nostalgia brain really changes it.
I just remember it being so cinematic. I remember the same thing about 10. I remember just being blown away. And then you go back and play it and you're like, this is a little clunky. And so I hope that they can stay true to form in that. I would love to see them kind of mix some of the old and new. I really like when a remake like that, like you kind of have like either flashbacks in the original graphics or something like that. And maybe that's something in the settings. I don't know how true to form I want it to be. I appreciate that the combat system could work identically. I appreciate that the boss fights could be in the same order and then all of that. But then I would love to see things like some of the cutscenes and like voice acting and all those things get remastered as true to form as possible. But really bring them up to the quality we can hit today.
My thing is that if they bring in an action combat system or a semi-action combat system, something of that nature, that's definitely a change from the turn-based, like I want them to look at what systems really work for them. And I think 12 is a great example, especially with the Gambit system, because if I am only controlling maybe one party member at a time, I want to be able to kind of queue up my team so that they're doing whatever. I think part of the fun, and especially a single player RPG, is building out your team, setting them up not just with gear, but with, I want you to make sure that this is what's going to happen. Otherwise, you got to have that kind of pause and taking you out of the action. If it is a true action RPG and I have to stop and do issue commands every 10 seconds, that ends up like, well, then why wasn't this a turn-based game? Like, if I'm playing it as a turn-based game, then why wasn't it? And so I honestly think that the changes could be overall strong, because it ends up being something that is different, that is fundamentally different. And so then you're like, okay, would I replay it for just the voices and the graphics alone? Yes. Now, if they bring in reasons to keep replaying it, if they keep, like whether the episodic means, I don't know. And like I said, I've expressed concerns because, like you said, you better be right. You got to deliver hands down, because it's like the fear would be that ultimately it's like we're left with just like, well, maybe 16 will be good. It's like if they really need to deliver on the overall product, because I think especially people who are concerned, who maybe didn't like 15 for what it was, and I would say that I don't think it was the combat. It could be, but it was that some of the other choices that they made overall with the narrative. I'm worried that a broken narrative, if they split it up into different chapters within the game itself, what we originally got, fundamentally you end up losing people, and then it doesn't end up resonating like we hope it does. Because I love when a Final Fantasy game can have that kind of impact on the world, and 7 did, and will 7 Remake have that opportunity as well? Crossing my fingers.
It had some spin-offs too, right? So
yes.
Like the episodic could explore, and those didn't all function with the same battle system.
Correct.
Like you had like a first-person shooter in there. You had like, it had a whole, and like, is this? I mean, talking about crossover as 14 players, like, is this how I get Cloud's sword, Cloud's hair, and Cloud's bike?
Well, you have Cloud's sword as a limit break.
Like, is this how I get like a true just hardcore? I don't know. Cloud's one of my favorite characters. Like, him and Dragon Ball Z were like the two things drawn on the side of all my homework growing up.
Nice.
Like,
well, sounds like somebody's doing some work outside into the next yard. So with that, Chris, you got any final thoughts before then we get this printed out? And you get
no, it says more in June. I would think that this is going to be part of all their E3 stuff. And then I would think that kind of with them focusing probably a lot of their marketing around Shadowbringers, as soon as that tames off, it's probably time to start focusing on like, what is this? And a little more than just a really, really awesome trailer.
So guys, those are our thoughts about the trailer. Those are our thoughts in general. We'd love to know yours. Sound off in the comments below. If you like this video, like these discussions, be sure to hit that like button. Share this video with your friends. Let's keep the conversation going. But for Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great day.
And we'll see you next time. We are 4 controversies away from never having a Q&A again.
Yeah. Just like, no, we're done with it, guys.
Because we're going to ask about Glamour. We're going to ask about Viera. We're going to ask about lore of future expansions, like they're going to expose that, and then we're going to say, why does my class suck? Are you fixing my class? And boom, 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 and those 4 people are always going to be up front. So yeah, now we just have to wait and hope the second 4
have good questions.
Can
we as a community start like pre-screening people in line, like just like, okay, hi, what's your question?
No, because they're going to put on the forums. It's going to be thumbs up, thumbs down. Those 4 people are the popular people. Everybody's like, right?